Vera was sitting quietly in her friend's kitchen, tears quietly rolling down her face, soaking into the tablecloth. The third bottle of martini was already empty. "You know, Anna, I'm such an idiot," Vera mumbled, wiping her eyes. "I've managed to throw away my entire life for the sake of some young guy." Anna, her oldest and most loyal friend, had stuck by her through thick and thin, especially after the scandalous divorce that nearly tore Barbara apart. They had shared decades of life, families, children, and history. 3 kids each, deep-rooted stories, and memories that stretched over 30 years. "Do you even realize what you've done?" Anne asked gently, concern creasing her forehead. "It's never too late to fix things," the hostess added, trying to offer comfort. Anna's heart ached for her friend. She understood all too well. At their age, the search for something new and exciting felt almost impossible. It wasn't easy to find joy or adventure once you get your 50s. Life had a way of making you feel stuck. The whole situation, as cliché as it was, had unfolded like a bad novel. A bored, middle-aged woman on vacation in Cyprus with a friend, a younger lover, a scandal, and, of course, the usual chaos of a midlife crisis. Barbara's children had long since flown the nest. Her oldest son had a family of his own with kids. Lucy, her youngest, was getting married soon. Serge had moved abroad, building a life and business of his own. As time passed, the calls and visits grew less frequent, and Barbara found herself slowly slipping into the background of her own life. She stopped taking care of herself. Igor, her husband, whom she had been with for decades, had lost interest long ago. He was always busy with work, and while he had once loved her, those feelings had faded. They had never worked together, and she had never needed to work. Life had been comfortable. But for the past 10 years, they had just been existing side by side. Still, she wasn't that old. She still wanted to feel alive, to go out, to have fun. She took care of the house all day, sometimes traveling with the children. After Igor's death, her children gave her a vacation, a 2-week trip to the sunny shores of the Mediterranean Sea with a cocktail at hand. It didn't ease the pain of losing Igor, but it did help her heal, albeit briefly. She spent her days on the beach, walked along the shore in the evenings, and had dinner in cozy restaurants. Then, one day, Anna didn't join her. Vera went out on her own, and that's when she met Leon. He was striking, tall, handsome, smart, and, to her surprise, only 24 years younger than her. He showered her with flowers, compliments, and attention, and for the first time in ages, she felt a spark of joy. Anna had warned her more than once that it wouldn't end well, but Vera had just laughed it off. After all, it was nice to feel beautiful and desired, even for a little while. Maybe nothing would have happened if Leon hadn't lived in the same city. But of course he did, and that changed everything. About a month after she returned, Vera burst into her friend's room, breathless and dishevelled, her words tumbling out in a jumbled mess. She mentioned Cyprus, Leon, and her husband, though it took her a moment to catch her breath before she could make sense of what she was trying to say. Igor, it turned out, had brought a colleague home the night before, and, by some twist of fate, that colleague was none other than Leon. At first, Their connection had been innocent enough, just phone calls, then a few coffee shop meetups, followed by more flowers and endless compliments. Igor hadn't immediately noticed the changes in his wife, the weight she'd lost, the makeup she started wearing, the way she'd vanish in the evenings, sometimes returning after midnight with flowers in hand, her eyes burning with something new and unfamiliar. She'd tell him she was with friends or at a book club, or sometimes she simply brushed him off. The climax came, as though it were straight out of a bad joke. Igor came home a day early from a business trip to an empty house. Vera didn't return until the early hours of the morning, and Leon was the one who brought her back. There was no dramatic scene. Igor, remarkably calm, simply asked what was going on. Vera, with equal calm, replied that she was leaving him, that she couldn't live with him anymore. She said he had abandoned her long ago, and that everything that had happened was his fault. Without hesitation, she packed her things, called Leon, and left with him. The sunset on that day felt like the closing of a chapter. But their new life together was fleeting. Leon turned out to be a man driven by petty motives, obsessed with material gain, and at times almost cruel in his indifference. Anna wasn't sure, but there were moments when she thought he was downright barbaric in his behavior. The relationship lasted only a couple of months before Vera, disillusioned and hurt, walked away. At the divorce court, she sobbed, begging Igor for forgiveness, but he remained resolute. His pride had been shattered, his trust violated. He was humiliated, deeply wounded by her betrayal. Though he had once loved her, the bitterness outweighed the sorrow. Vera, now seeing the full weight of her decisions, couldn't help but feel a deep sense of loss. After all, they had shared a lifetime together, and in the quiet corners of his heart, perhaps Igor had begun to regret not seeing her as more than just the woman he had always known. But that regret was buried beneath layers of resentment. A year later, there was Barbara again, sitting in the kitchen of her only real friend, the one who had never turned her back on her, crying once more. Her tears fell onto the crisp white tablecloth, heavy and endless, as though the hurt had no end.